gotta get a better setup. This is terrible. You can't see it, it's really terrible setup. So this video is a quick introduction to colored pencils. We're just gonna be doing the basics, which is just layering using varying amounts of pressure and how to transition between your colors or your values to give a nice sense of realism. What I really love about colored pencils is that you can make them look like paintings. And then people look at your drawing and they're like, oh, did you paint that? And you're like, nope, I drew that. It's colored pencils. And they're like, mind blown. So if you're a total beginner, this is a perfect place to start. But if you also just want to get your skills a little better and practice more, it should help you too. All right, I hope you enjoy and have fun. First things first, keep your pencils sharp. Do you see these happy dancing pencils? They're happy because they are sharp pencils. There's a time and place for dull pencils. This is not that time and place. Sharpen your pencils. Paying attention to the pressure you use when applying colored pencils is very important. Using light pressure like I am in this first circle will allow you to build numerous layers of evenly coated color. So paper has like a texture to it. It's little hills and valleys in a way. And once you fill all of the valleys of your paper, you can no longer add more layers to it. Using light pressure like that allows you to preserve those valleys. It's actually, colored pencil is a pretty slow process. As you layer pencil, it blends itself. So as you move along in your drawings, you can start putting more pressure on, like in this middle circle. It's a medium pressure. You can see it's a little darker, but it's still giving me enough room to work on top of it if I need to modify color or value. In the last circle, this is very heavy pressure. This sort of pressure shouldn't be used until near the end of the drawing. It's like a burnishing process. It fills up those valleys in the paper very fast. It's really hard, if not impossible, to erase when you get this dark, and you can no longer add too much on top of it. So it's game over at that point. The direction in which you apply the strokes of pencil to paper is also very important. There are two main ways to consider the direction of how you work your pencil. The first is this hatching motion, like in this circle. It's kind of just a fancy way of saying back and forth lines. This is the most comfortable and natural way for most people to work with pencil. But here's the problem with hatching sometimes. When filling big shapes, it's really easy to lose control of your pencil. You can leave like little white lines, or if you try to break the shape down into smaller areas, you're going to leave dark areas when you overlap the strokes of pencil, and it starts to look kind of messy, uneven. So you can see how this square is starting to look, it's a rectangle. This rectangle is looking a little messy. And that could be fixed later, but it's better to just give yourself a good start instead of having to try to fix it later on and hope that it works. The other main way of putting pencil to paper is to use these small circle motions that slightly overlap each other. It's like a really controlled scribbling, like fancy scribbles. And you can see it fills the paper more evenly. Unfortunately, it's a slower process and some people find it to be tedious and unnatural, but it is a really good way to fill things evenly without worrying about uneven marks. It is actually pretty easy to smooth out your uneven hatching as long as you are using light layers of pressure. You just go back to it and cross hatch. That means making lines in the opposite direction. So go from left to right, then up to down, and then diagonal. And you can see how this one's smoothing out a lot better as I do that. It's also pretty important to pay attention to the contour of your object when using hatching lines. A contour is just the fancy way of saying outlines. We use these contour lines to define an outline or the form of an object. So if you're filling something in that curves, like this cylinder, you want the lines to follow the curve. If I had drawn straight lines straight across it, it's going to flatten the shape. Following the contour makes a shape look more realistic and three-dimensional. And you can see what I mean in this drawing of the trumpet vine. All those lines are helping to define the shape of the petals. So this exercise is going to help you work on pencil pressure and using the different pencil strokes to create an even and smooth transition from dark to light and between two colors. Give yourself 2 long rectangles and make them small because you don't want to spend hours doing this. And I mean, unless you do, if you're that bored, just go with it. In the first rectangle, you're going to begin moving from left to right with light pressure. As you move towards the right, try to go lighter and lighter until the colors just kind of fade away. And you can do this by literally lifting your pencil up very slightly as you go along, so it's just barely brushing the paper. You can see that I kind of use a mix of hatching and those fancy scribbly circles to fill the areas. That's the most comfortable for me to use. You're going to figure that out for yourself, what feels most comfortable and natural to you. And then once you're done fading this out, you're going to go back to the left and begin doing another layer of color. Again, going lighter and lighter as you move along, but this time stop earlier. Don't go to the end of the previous color. And you're going to do this again and again, left to right, starting each area on the left with a little more pressure. And your last layer will mostly just be really hard pressure only on the left side of your darkest area. In the bottom rectangle, you're going to basically do the same thing, but stop halfway through that rectangle instead of going all the way to the right. You're going to then take another color, something pretty different, and you're going to want to move from the right to left this time, again meeting kind of in the middle. The goal is to transition these two colors into each other without any really abrupt lines where they transition. And this exercise will take a little bit of back and forth as you modify your different values or colors. I'm going to move that green slightly into the red area, move the red area slightly into the green area until you get happy with it. Again, this is many layers of light pressure, building up your pressure as you go along. The only areas with very hard pressure should be the far edges with your deepest values. And once you're done with this, it's time for a secret weapon. This is a colorless blender. It's basically everything that goes into a colored pencil but without pigment. So what you do with this is you push down and burnish with really hard pressure all over, and it's just shoving all those pigments down into the paper valleys, making it super smooth and seamless. So let's put these ideas together by shading an actual object. I'm going to do a sphere because simple and small. So first I took like kind of a medium magenta-y color to lay down a nice base coat. And you can see I'm making the color fade as it's getting toward the highlight near the top of that sphere. I'm using mostly fancy little scribble motions, and I'm going to start darkening that shadowy area. A little more pressure at this point. I came back in with a darker red, and then came in again to make it even darker with a violet. You can see that I keep modifying my pressure, going always lighter as I'm going towards the highlight and starting to press a little harder in those shadowy areas to lay down a little more pigment. I came back again with the magenta just to kind of put everything together. And once I have my values looking good, I came in with a yellow and burnished it with some heavy pressure. And you see it turns it orange because, color mixing, yellow over reds. But it also makes everything look really nice and unified in color. And then I did burnish everything again with a colorless blender to make it extra smooth after that. And that's pretty much as simple as I feel like I can break it down. Just the idea of varying levels of pressure to build up your drawings, as well as paying attention to how you apply the direction of your pencil to make everything even. And I'll make a few more tutorials to explore this subject more because colored pencil is totally my favorite.